Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Playful Love panel featuring sports romance titles. My name is Linsey Milillo. I'm a librarian and assistant branch manager of the Lane Libraries in Fairfield, Ohio. I'm honored to be monitoring this panel. Now, let's introduce our panelists. First up is Tegan Phillips. Diagnosed with fibromyalgia as a teenager, she uses her lived experience to convey character struggles in fiction. After a school trip, she discovered her love for ice hockey and wrote her 2025 debut novel, Melting for You. Her newest release, also from Hera, is Hot and Cold, book two in the Spears Players series, set to hit shelves on May 19th of 2026. Next, we have author Grace Newman. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and her dog Daisy. Originally from Gloucester, Grace grew up in a avid Formula One fan family and has had the pleasure of watching Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton in the World Drivers' Championship, which is where her love for the sport was born. She focuses on writing sassy female heroines who challenge stereotypes, shatter glass ceilings, and still have time for romance. Her debut novel, Racing Hearts, released in late 2025, and her follow up, The Finish Line, is slated for publication by Hera in July 2026. Thirdly, we have Emma Rae, author of contemporary romance with a heavy dose of drama and a little extra spice. Two sports romances from Canelo Hero are now available: Love Game, a modern tennis romance, and Off Limits, a forbidden love romance, sports romance between a cheerleader and an NFL pro footballer. She also has other titles available, including I Knew You Were Trouble, that's a boy band romance. And her next book, Love at First Ride, is a motorcycle romance that will release in June 2026. And lastly, we have Tara Sexton, based in Arkansas, and in between working and spiriting her two kids around to activities, she writes contemporary romance and fantasy that explores women embracing their sexuality and power, realistic and flawed love, and smart mouth heroines. Tara is an avid sports fan and is currently in her soccer mom era. She can be found on the sidelines of a game, cheering on her girls and plotting her next book. Her debut, The Greatest Game, is set for release by Canelo Romance on May 19th, 2026. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's jump into our first question. Now, this will be for all of you. We start out, can you give us a quick 30-second overview of your current novels? We'll begin with Tegan.
Hi. So, Mountain for You, quick 30 seconds. 10 years after they were dating in college, Ellis and Liam bump into each other on a night out, have a one night stand that leads to a pregnancy. The book follows that pregnancy from beginning to end and all the trials and tribulations that come with being a single mom, a disabled woman, and trying to keep some of your life to yourself when you are a professional sports player. And Hot and Cold is a bisexual florist wakes up married to the hockey team captain after a year of flirting with each other on and off. And when she demands a divorce, he says, "No, I would like to stay married, please." So Hot and Cold follows them throughout that marriage, trying to get his inheritance. And when a stalker jeopardizes their fragile relationship, it's a question of whether they will be able to keep their budding relationship going.
Thank you. How about Grace next?
My current novel, Racing Hearts, always have it ready and around, is a Formula One sports romance novel about Georgia. She's the first female driver on the grid in decades, and it's about a female-run Formula One team. So it's got all-female leadership. It's got two women drivers in it, and it's about their quest to be successful in Formula One, and especially in motorsports, which is such a male-driven environment. So it's their quest to win. It's her personal quest to say that I can do this and I can be the best racer, even if I am a woman. And then it's also Luca's story and his story to say, I've fallen out of love with this sport, and he meets Georgia. And Georgia says, how could you fall out of love with this sport? It's the only thing I think about. He says, well, maybe you should also think about something else and about balance as well. So it's really her story for kind of greatness, and then also their love story to say we can bring out the best in each other, but of course we're going to do it by having the team's fake date because she needs sponsorship money, and who doesn't want to give money to the cocky Italian romance on the rival team? So it kind of plays on some of our favorite sports romance tropes, and then also kind of discusses what it's like to be a woman in a male-dominated environment.
Can you tell us a little bit about the finish line?
Oh, yes. Sorry, that one. I can talk about it now. I'm so used to feeling like I can't talk about it. And then the finish line is this kind of a second part of the story, which is Lily, the other female driver on the grid. And so it's about her upcoming story about trying to move teams. So she's moved from the female dominated team, female run team, and now she's on a male run team. She's the only woman on this team. She's the only woman around the engineers. And it's about her story of really kind of fighting to have a voice on this team while also competing for a championship. And it's her first time that she's really been able to win and dominate in a team because Georgia was on the other team. So it's kind of her own quest for greatness, which is a really fun story.
Thank you so much. Emma, can you tell us a little bit about your novel?
I can. Hi, everyone. So these are my two sports romances. First of all, we have Love Game. Love Game is about a British woman called Elle, who she takes a job as a personal chef to an American professional tennis player called Nikki. He's a bit of a diva. She needs the job, and she starts working for him at Wimbledon. And he has a strange bit of a tick in that he likes to get up in the middle of the night and eat food. And so she is kind of tasked with keeping his belly full. And they kind of have this romance that develops over time. And she ends up taking a job with him full time. So the story is all about how their romance develops. And then we have Off Limits, which is, as you said, is a forbidden romance between a cheerleader and an NFL pro player. She is a rookie cheerleader for an NFL team, and she signs a contract to say that she will not fraternize with any of the pro players. And she meets her name is Serenity. His name is Jake. She meets Jake in the supermarket where she has left her card in her car and doesn't have any cash. And so he ends up paying for her supermarket groceries, and they don't realize who the other person is. And so their romance kind of starts out on a kind of bit of an awkward footing because they then find out that they're not actually supposed to be dating. And that's those.
Thank you so much. And Tara, tell us a little bit about your book.
Hello, everyone. The Greatest Game is a true rivals to lovers sports romance, with a sport being soccer. So we have Marcy Ackerman, who is our female main character, who gets her first coaching job at an elite private school in North Carolina. And Marcy is dealing with all kinds of sexism in a small southern town, and finds out that ex-hotshot pro Remington Lockley is going to be coaching the rival team for her school. And so to make matters worse when she's already struggling in her first professional job. So unfortunately, they do have a bit of a run-in at camp prior to the school season starting, and the sparks fly, essentially. And so when the season starts off, it's all Marcy can do to stay away from Remy, but she also wants to prove something to the men who are in charge of her job, basically, and who have given her an ultimatum that she must win a state championship in order to keep her contract for the next year.
Thank you so much. So this next question will be for Tegan, Grace, and Emma. So we've talked about a little bit that these are not your first sports romances. Can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up wanting to write this genre? Let's start with Tegan.
So when I was 16, my school went on a trip to New York, and one of the boys decided to plan a trip to an ice hockey game and didn't invite any of the girls. I I would not stand for that. So a bunch of us ended up going with him. And my mind was blown. I've never really been interested in sports, but that's because it turns out I just need a little bit of danger to my sports. So when it came down to writing, I wanted to write stuff that I knew, which is why in Mountain View, Ellis has fibromyalgia, the same as me. I didn't want to make it even more difficult for myself because writing a book's hard enough. So I decided to write it in a world that I was already in love with, already knew a lot about. So it wasn't necessarily about writing a sports romance for the truth. It was more writing a sports romance to make my life a little bit easier.
Thank you so much. How about Grace?
We can get off of mute. My answer kind of similar to Tegan that way is that I grew up a Formula One fan my entire life. It's something that when my parents moved from the UK to America, it wasn't a big sport in America 30 years ago. And so it was kind of that thing we did as a family. I really used to buy it on pay-per-view. And it was that thing we did as a family to really bond. I grew up my entire life watching it. My grandfather was a race car driver outside of Manchester. So that was just something really special to be able to have with the family. And, I worked in a male dominated environment. I was the only woman on a team of 12 men for many years. And so I just kind of combined those two. I combined a frustrating work trip that I had along with my love of Formula One and said, I'm going to make it easy on myself. I know what it's like to be in a male dominated environment and I know everything about F1. So I'm going to pick a sport. And I picked sports romance because I loved reading them. I read, so that was really the genre I was reading at the time. And I said, I love sports. I watch many different sports. So this is the one that I know a lot about. And this is kind of the thing that I'm facing right now in my life. So let me write about, a heroine that I can identify with. I wanted to write a character that I wanted to read.
Thank you. And Emma?
Yeah, I just really stumbled into a sports romance. It wasn't like an intentional thing. I had written my I Knew You Were Trouble, which is like a boy band romance, very much centered around the music world. I was kind of looking around for an idea of something to write next. And I seem to remember that my husband was watching a documentary on Netflix about golf and golfers. And I'm not very into golf at all, but it was one of those things. I was just kind of like watching it through osmosis. And it was about one of these golfers had a personal chef and who would cook for them all the time. And I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting concept. So I didn't want to do something with golf because golf is not that exciting. When I'd finished university, I'd worked at Wimbledon in one of the debenture lounges, serving coffees and teas and things like that. And it was a really great experience. And I'd always had it in my head that one day I was going to include Wimbledon in a kind of book of some kind, but I'd never really had the opportunity to do it. So this was just kind of a marriage of those two things, this kind of idea that a tennis player could have a personal chef and that person would be with them. And it's a perfect kind of forced proximity idea. So that's kind of where it came from.
Thank you. I have to tell you, I live about a half an hour away from Mason, where they have the tennis every year for the.
Okay, yeah.
So I chuckled a little bit. I was like, I know that one.
Yeah. And I actually used to live really near the Wimbledon complex for a while. I lived in a place called Earlsfield, which is like the sort of neighborhood next to Wimbledon. And so when I used to go running, I used to run past it. And so that was another thing, like I couldn't go back into it, but I always have these very fond memories of serving people tea and coffee. But I did get to sit and watch some of the matches because we were like seat fillers. So whenever there was a gap on a seat, they would put us in there and we'd have to go watch the match. So that was always really fun. So that's kind of why I wanted to include it in a book.
That's great. So Tara, this is your first sports romance.
Yes.
Why did you decide to wade into this specific genre?
Well, I have played sports my entire life. I grew up playing softball. I did play soccer for a year in a boys' league. It just wasn't very large where I grew up. But when I had children, my oldest decided she wanted to play soccer. And then, of course, my youngest followed in her footsteps. And so I started learning about the sport and absolutely adored it. And so I started watching different levels of it, and kind of grew with the sport as my daughters were playing it. And I was like, I love how competitive this is, how physical. Like I never knew like everything that was that went along with soccer. And so when I started kind of venturing into the romance genre with writing, I was like, you know what, this is something that I want to do. And my characters for The Greatest Game, Marcy, actually came from another book idea where she was basically the best friend. But the entire time I wrote that book, she never had best friend, like sidekick kind of energy. I was like, she is a main character and she needs her own book. So when I decided to do that, it was definitely a sports romance.
Thank you. Let's circle back to Grace. So you've talked a little bit about the challenges that your heroines face in your novels with the F1 racing. Can you share a little bit of what you hope your readers will learn and invest in these two stories?
Absolutely. I think part of what I really wanted to show in these novels is that even though, my readers are not they're not F1 drivers. In fact, most of them probably aren't even motorsport racers. I wanted to show kind of the strength and resilience that women often have to have when they walk into a male dominated field, or especially walking into a sports field, even if it is a sport that everyone else around you is also a woman. You have to have this real resilience and you have to have this ambition within you. I wanted to show that. And I think it's something that readers can really identify with. As I was writing it, I was like, well, the story didn't start because I was a racer. The story started because I was struggling at a job where I would walk into a room and I was the lead analyst on a project. And I remember a guy looking at me and asking for me to refill the coffee. And I said, that's, something wrong with refilling the coffee. And I love coffee, but I was like, that's actually not why I'm here. I'm here to set up. I'm about to give you a presentation you've paid my company for. So that's really was that flight home. And I was just kind of raging inside. And I said, you know what? Other people can identify with this, and other people have probably also felt this way and have felt kind of underestimated. And so that is what I think readers can take away from this story. It is a story where you kind of read for both of them, for both Lily and Georgia. They have different problems. For Lily in the finish line, it's that she's always happy and smiley, it's a grumpy sunshine, but that's always her outside. But on the inside, she's like, well, I actually am kind of struggling too, or I have other thoughts, or she makes jokes and she's very defensive that way. That's her defense mechanism, is just kind of making these jokes. And finally, Henri looks at her and says, like, you don't have to smile at that. Like, it's okay. And I think a lot of women can identify with that. So that's really the kind of characters I was writing. What I hope my readers, when they go through, they'll say, well, I've been in that situation where I felt uncomfortable and I was just going to smile instead of standing up for myself. And so that's the journey they're both learning. Georgia in more of an opposite way, where she's kind of been told, hey, let's kind of soften this and let's think about what we're saying, as opposed to Lily, who's saying, like, I actually need to stand up and I want to fight back on some of these things. So I think my readers will really identify with that, and people have really been seeing that in Racing Hearts. So I'm really excited for everyone to see that next level of growth in the finish line.
Thank you so much. All right, so now comes the time of every romance panel. Our viewers are always dying to know, how would you all rate your novel's spicy scene? So we'll start with Tegan, a level 1 to 5. What are your readers in for?
Okay, I don't think either of them are necessarily very crazy spicy. With Mountain for You, I'd say probably 3, because he gets out of business quite fast, but they had to for her to get pregnant. So it happens very early in the book, and they don't really slow down, but it's not crazy. And in Hot and Cold, this might be cheating, I'm going to go with 2.5. It's a little bit more of a slow burn to get them to start, but once they do, it's definitely up there.
Thank you. How about back to Grace?
Well, I really went back and forth with some of my my beta readers on this one. I was like, what did you guys think? I would say the first one probably like a 3, and the second one can I cheat and say 3.5, maybe 4? It's not as many scenes, but I was like, oh, wow, on one of the scenes. So they definitely got creative because it's a forbidden romance. So yeah, I think in between those scores.
Thank you. Emma?
I'm gonna go solid 3. I wouldn't say it's like mega spicy. It's the sort of thing that you could give the book to your neighbor and not be too embarrassed, I think. Um, so yeah, I think for both my sports romances, I'm gonna go maybe 3, maybe a 3.5 just. Yeah, it's definitely not. I'm not sure you'd want your mum to read it, but yeah, maybe your next door neighbor's okay.
And Tara?
Okay, so I am going to say a 3 at least. It was a little bit more slow burn than I anticipated it would be, but I think once we get into it, it's there are some definitely steamy scenes in there. And back to Emma's comment about you wouldn't want your mother to read it. My mother is dying to read it, so but a 3 for sure.
Thank you so much. We'll stay with Tara for just a second. Marcy navigates sexism and professional disrespect very early on in the book. How did you approach gender dynamic in such a competitive environment?
Sure. Yes, she does. That is one of the largest topics in my book. And I think it's really important to talk about when we talk about female in sports. So I wanted to approach it in what I think is a very honest and transparent manner. Just because we are in 2026 doesn't mean that these things aren't happening to women in professional settings or women in athletic settings, especially perhaps in smaller areas. So I wanted to be as honest as I could be, just with lived in experiences, and also, but in a way too that didn't make it seem over dramatized. I wanted it to be realistic in its honesty. And so I wanted to show women having emotions because I feel like we are constantly told to, sit there and act pretty and, keep it in because we're supposed to be reserved and ladylike. But in athletics, that's just not the case. I mean, when you score a goal, you want to celebrate. When you're frustrated out there that the ref has given you a yellow card, you want to be able to show that frustration just the same as a man would do on the field. And so I wanted to portray all of that in my book in an honest manner. And I wanted to make sure that we showed that women who were able to show their emotions and who confronted these things in the workplace and in athletics could still get their a happy ending.
Thanks so much. Let's go back to Emma. Question for you. So your protagonist Elle begins the story in a deeply kind of unbalanced relationship. What keeps her there at that moment, and how does that experience shape her relationship with Nikki?
Yeah, so she starts the novel in a very low place. She's been made redundant, so she is looking for work. She's also realized that her boyfriend, who she lives with, is not being faithful and is cheating on her behind her back. So she goes along to this job interview that she's been offered, in a kind of very low confidence, just not feeling great about herself, kind of questioning everything. And suddenly she takes this job working for this American pro tennis player. And it's like her life is turned upside down. Suddenly it's like she's got an escape route. And she kind of falls in love with him very quickly. She kind of spends a lot of time with him alone late at night, and their relationship becomes quite sort of close quite quickly. And he's kind of like a daydream. She knows that this is going to end. She's basically been offered the job with the idea that however long he lasts in Wimbledon, and that's it, time's up. So it's kind of, for her, she wants him to stay in Wimbledon as long as possible so she can stay working with him as long as possible. But this is kind of escape from her miserable reality. So she wants things to kind of carry on. And in the end, kind of slight spoiler, he doesn't get past the first or second round. And so she thinks that everything has kind of come to an end. And then when he offers her a job, it's like, my whole life is now different, and I can cling on to something. It's like a dream for her. And it's kind of the start of an adventure. And so she kind of says goodbye to the boyfriend, and that's kind of the kind of momentum of the story. She goes with him and goes on this big adventure and moves to America. So
Thank you so much. Tegan, in Melting for You, Ellis lives with a chronic illness, and in Hot and Cold, Linsey is dealing with her own kind of pain. How do these novels portray invisible pain and its impact on relationships?
I think pain is inherently human. Everyone feels it in 100 different ways. With Ellis and her fibromyalgia, there's so much baggage that she already brings into a relationship that, I mean, not only has she got this disability, she's also a single mom. There is the pressure that is put on her to be everything to everyone all of the time. And I feel like that is a very big connection for readers to see that, like, hey, this isn't a picture perfect woman who has her entire life sorted and knows what she's doing. She is lost in her pain and trying to push through and trying to pretend, yeah, I have everything handled, even though she very much doesn't, because it's easier to do that than admit that you might need help. And then Liam comes in and gives her that shoulder to lean on, that strength, and shares the pain with her. He doesn't try and fix it. He just is there in it with her. And then in Hot and Cold, it's a lot more based in grief, not necessarily grief from death, but from family trauma and not having that connection anywhere. And Aidan sees Linsey in that pain and in that grief and putting on a mask to be the funny best friend who's always joking and flirting. And he sees her because he is also the same. He is the Southern charm, the ice hockey captain who's always trying to make everyone laugh and feel good about themselves, and see each other in that. So when he goes through pain in the book, she is so quick to be his support that she realizes, hey, if I can be that for him, why can't I let him be that for me? And it's the same kind of thing of sharing that pain and realizing that falling in love isn't going to make everything in the world picture perfect and incredible. But if you've got someone to share those burdens with, it feels nicer and less alone and more just vulnerable, but in a good way. Instead of where they start the story, where they all feel emotionally vulnerable, they feel kinder to themselves because they can be kind to each other. So Linsey can be kind to Aidan when he's going through it, and that makes it easier for her to accept that kindness when it comes back her way.
Thank you so much. So this next question, it will be for all of you. How does vulnerability and authenticity impact the characters' relationship over time? And what role does ambition play for your characters and the success of their relationships? Let's start with Grace.
In both novels, I like this question a lot. In both novels, I wanted to show, I feel like in a lot of romance novels, it's the men who we kind of learn and we're like, oh, they need to become vulnerable. So I really wanted that to be Georgia and Lily's story. I think probably more so in the first one. Then Lily comes in with some vulnerability, and she actually, I think, more on the ambition side, kind of picks up on that and says, actually, I'm never stepping down for anything, so I don't care if you're my biggest rival here. But in book one, I really wanted to show that Georgia had to become vulnerable, and I feel like Luca was already there. He was already this very kind of happy-go-lucky but still very thoughtful person, and Georgia had to learn that she was 100% ambition in terms of, her professional life, but in her personal life, that was really coming through as well. And I wanted to show her walls breaking down. And she has these moments where Luca does such sweet things for her that just really kind of has her sit down and say, that's really interesting. Like maybe he can just be more than this fake boyfriend. He actually really wants to be there for me. And I really loved like writing those scenes, was just really impactful for me as well. Really enjoyed that. And I think it shows this authenticity in their relationship, especially by the end. You're really seeing these two genuine people. And then for the finish line for Lily, I guess it kind of almost went the other way, where she definitely learned to be vulnerable, but it was Henri that really had to break down a little more. So that was kind of nice to play on that side. But that's really for the both of them. It's their story of learning to be vulnerable together, because they are tough in different ways. They're both very ambitious. They're 1 and 2 in the championships, kind of like the point of the story. They're going head to head every week, swapping who's the championship leader. But they needed to learn to be vulnerable together. And in this sense, like, they're not supposed to be dating. No one really likes that idea, but it, in the end, it kind of shows this authentic relationship, and their vulnerability of how they feel about being at the top, and their ambition makes them vulnerable because they're kind of the only ones who understand what it's like and where they're sitting. So yeah, it was really fun to explore both their relationships in kind of different ways.
Thank you. Emma.
So I like this question about vulnerability. So for me in the book, Elle feels constantly vulnerable. Like, she has taken on this job. She's fallen in love with her employer, which is a really bad idea. She knows. He also already has a fiance who he has a very not so great relationship with. So throughout this novel, she's kind of battling her feelings the whole time and trying not to follow her heart. So she feels completely vulnerable. She's also fallen in love with somebody who is incredibly ambitious, and tennis is literally his whole life. It's like he doesn't have time for anything else. And so the pair of them kind of have to, he has to realize that there's something else other than tennis in his life. And it takes kind of Elle coming into his life to make him realize that, and to realize that everything before that has kind of been inauthentic, and he's just been going after something that isn't necessarily that real. So yeah, it's an interesting concept between them, because they both have to kind of reach this point where they accept their relationship for what it is, and accept that they are in love and they can't fight it, and that everything else is just noise. So yeah, it's an interesting journey that they both go on.
Thank you. How about Tara?
Okay, so this is probably my favorite question thus far, because I feel like it just really hits both of my characters. With Marcy, she struggles with vulnerability. She had a very neglectful childhood growing up in New York City, and she had parents who were very narcissistic, and they were more about their art that they were creating rather than really taking care of their child. So she has grown up in a bit of a hard manner and has had to look out for herself. So vulnerability is something she's not comfortable with, and she gives it very sparingly to people in her life. So her journey throughout this is trying to discover that vulnerability, to be with someone who is already very open about loving. Remy, who is the male main character, comes from a very loving childhood with his mother, and so he is ready for that, and she is not. So that is a large journey for Marcy, and it is something that we also too kind of delve into with mental health issues that she has. I think it's really important that we get that kind of representation in books, and positive reinforcement about seeking therapy and that sort of thing. So Marcy really delves into that with her character. Remy, however, on the flip side, struggles with the authenticity portion of this, because he was a pro football player over in the Premier League. And so you have Remy, who is this hotshot kind of playboy when he's over in England, but he's having to take a break for reasons that you can find out if you read the book. And so he is really dealing with who is he when he is not just, this celebrity over there. So he's taking time off and he's coaching these girls. And is there more to him than this persona that the world sees? So, and then we toss in the ambition. They are both the most competitive and ambitious people that you will ever meet. I mean, it is present from page one all the way until the end, with them wanting to win and wanting to win each other's hearts. And so ambition is really a large part of what keeps driving them apart in their relationship. But I think kind of the crux of it is learning to be vulnerable and authentic is what teaches them, what love really is, and the biggest win that you can have. So
Thank you. And Tegan.
So vulnerability in both of my books was very key. Like I said, Ellis is so independent and has so many walls up that Liam has to get a battering ram to make her even a little bit vulnerable. And in Hot and Cold, there's so much that is thrown onto these two people, from grief, from stalkers, from everything you can think of, trauma, that they're forced to be vulnerable because they're both in Aiden's childhood town. She doesn't really know anyone. He's trying to put up this facade for his family that he's okay, that the only place they can find a time to be vulnerable is together. But the ambition part of the question really is a very big part of Mountain for You. Their ambition is what makes them break up 10 years ago in the prologue, because he wants to join the NHL. He wants to go and move across the country to New York and travel and go here, and she just wants to put down roots. And that is why they break up, because his ambition is leading him away, and she's not ready to. I mean, she's 21. She doesn't want to go following a man around after a year of them being together. And then it gets flipped on its head later on in the book, where his ambition is no longer about getting all of the medals or all of the trophies or traveling the world. It's about being a family and finding that home. And his ambition becomes that instead. It's not about what he wins. It's about what he gets to come home to at the end of the day.
Thank you. Let's go back to Tara for a second. The Greatest Game balances romance, but there's some other heavier social issues. Can you share just a bit about what our readers can expect when they meet Marcy and Remy?
Yes, absolutely. So I did want to pair some heavier social issues with the kind of quintessential flirty, fun banter that you get in romance, kind of like a la Gilmore Girls. If you watch it, that's kind of what I was going for with the banter in this book. Also, you get a heavy dose of longing. I mean, this is a bit of a slow burn as far as the end game portion of it goes. But I did want to have real life issues that I think are really what makes love so poignant. And I wanted it to feel real when you were reading it between these two characters. And so that is why I wanted to include things like sexism in sports and dealing with mental health issues and dealing with vulnerability like we spoke about earlier. These are all important things that are very real in life, and I wanted to make sure that I showcase that so that it's not just something we pass over, because I think love encompasses all of those things, and we have to be able to handle those to have a successful love with a partner.
Thank you. Grace, when you start writing, is the chemistry between your characters the cornerstone, or do you build other aspects first?
It's a good question. And I actually think for book one, it was definitely the chemistry first. I had thought about book one for so long before writing it. It was basically completely mapped out in my head. And their chemistry, I think, immediately just leaps off the page just from the beginning when they run into each other at the elevator, and she bumps into him, and she's just kind of like a little starstruck, like, oh, he's very attractive, but he's very annoying, and not enemies to lovers way. And so that really, the chemistry for me just leaked off the page. I was loving it. And then I think for the second one, it was different for the finish line, because it's they were friends, kind of like friends to enemies to friends to lovers. They definitely react differently. Their relationship is really kind of formed differently. They are these friends, and they go back to saying, like, I miss your friendship and I miss being next to you, but that turns into, and now I actually miss something more. Like, I think our friendship has now turned into something else. So for that one, I really explored the friendship aspect, and then really on the second draft had to go back through and add in the extra chemistry that you want to see in a romance novel, but I wanted their friendship to be kind of solid in there from the beginning. So definitely different approaches for different stories.
Thank you. Emma, the title of your book, Love Game, directly references tennis. Can you talk about the ideas of winning, losing, and how control play out metaphorically in your book?
Yeah, so Nicky is obviously a tennis player. He has previously won a Grand Slam. He's kind of used to being very successful, but he's in a point at his life, in his professional career anyway, where he's at an all-time low. So he's coming into the novel kind of frustrated, and he just wants to win. That's all that matters to him, is winning and getting back onto this kind of winning streak. And kind of mirroring that, as I said, Elle's starting life in this novel at a very kind of low point, and she wants a better life. She wants an escape from the life that she has. And so the pair of them are kind of striving for something that just doesn't feel like it's attainable. And then when they meet each other, there's this kind of shift in both of them. Like, she realizes that she can have a better life. And he realizes that there is more to life than just this professional game that he has been so obsessed with from childhood. And so she kind of gives him a glimpse of what could be, and that it isn't all about sport, and that love is kind of winning overall, and so that the sport kind of takes a back seat. So that was kind of what I was trying to bring out in the novel, and that by falling in love with somebody, you are taking a risk, but it's worth it in the end. So yeah, it was a really kind of fun concept to play with, and I think what I learned is that sports people, they do tend to be very single-minded sometimes, and that's kind of a good thing, but it also kind of reminds you that there is other things other than your sport. There is life, and there is family, and there is love, and there is great joy to be had. So that's kind of what I was going for with the book.
Thank you. Tegan, a common theme in your novels is found family. Can you explain how this impacts your characters?
Yeah, both of the FMCs in my books don't have the best home life childhood. Ellis was raised by a mum after her dad died, and her mum was so focused on being a socialite and being rich and marrying up that she tried to instill those things in Ellis, and it just made her rebel. And then when she gets pregnant with her boyfriend Michael, he kicks her out. And she realizes that she doesn't have anyone, she doesn't have family. And so she tries to create that family with just her and her little boy. And when Liam comes back into her life, he brings a whole host of people with him. The entire team becomes her family, becomes family for her little boy. And I think in life, as well as in books, it's all about having a village. I think that, yeah, okay, when you have a baby, it's good to have a village, but it's also good to have a village when you might be going through grief, or you might just be struggling and having a bad week. We all need to have those people to lean on. And I really wanted to make sure that I gave that to Ellis. And then in Hot and Cold, Aiden's family is a very, very big part of the story. I mean, we go to Texas to meet his entire family, and his relationship with his sisters shows Linsey what a healthy family dynamic and sibling dynamic should be, because that's never been her life. She's a bisexual woman, and her family were very religious, and when they found out, decided they didn't want to be her family anymore. So yes, she gets this team the same way Ellis does, but she also gets the host of Anza's sisters, who are just ready to take her under the wing, even if she might be lying to them at first about the validity of their marriage. It doesn't really matter, because finding that unconditional love when you don't feel like you deserve it is the most important thing in real life as well as in books.
Thank you. We're almost out of time for today, but one last question for you all. What can readers expect from you next in one of your future projects? Let's start with Grace.
So I have another project coming up. I have another sports romance. I won't say the sport yet, but we're very excited. And that one is yeah, really, really exciting for that. And then I also have a contemporary romance that I'm working on, 3-part series. So really, really excited for that. And I'm excited to try something else that isn't sport romance, even if I'll miss it.
Thank you. Tegan, what's up next for you?
I'm not 100% sure. I have so many ideas, and it's just trying to find the time to get them all out of my brain. I'd really like to dip my toe into something a little bit more suspenseful, which I did a little bit with Hot and Cold and the stalker element. I really, really enjoyed that, and I'd love to do something like that. But I want to make sure that all of my stories, no matter what, are based in realism, real people, real struggles. So maybe a slightly darker twist. We'll see.
Thank you. Emma, what's up for you next?
So next for me is a motorcycle romance. It's called Love at First Ride. It is set in the same universe as Off Limits. And it is basically about a British woman who her father has married an American woman. So she moves to an American high school, and she doesn't have the best time there. And the novel opens with her last day, or high school has finished. She goes to a high school party to celebrate graduation. She's not had the best experience. She's been kind of this gawky, nerdy British girl who, she found it really hard to make friends. And she ends up part of this high school game where one of the guys at high school is blindfolded and goes into like a walk-in closet, and she has to go inside the closet and kiss this guy, and he obviously doesn't know who he's kissed, and she ends up fleeing the place in kind of a Cinderella moment. And then we jump forward 5 years. She's working as like a candy striper in a nursing home, and she ends up rescuing a kind of runaway child who is wanted by the police for car theft. And it turns out his older brother is the same boy that she kissed in that closet. And so that's kind of the premise for the story. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to write. I really enjoyed writing this one. So I'm excited for readers to get their hands on it. It's coming out in June in the UK. I'm not sure yet when it's coming out in the US, but yeah, I really, really love this one.
Sounds fun. And Tara, what's up next for you?
So I just recently turned in a first draft for my next interconnected standalone for the Endgame series, which is a sapphic sports romance that's going to be set in New York City. The main character, or one of the main characters, should I say, is going to be a character from The Greatest Game. So you don't have to read The Greatest Game, but you can, and you'll recognize some of the people in it. So I'm super excited about that. That will actually come out next year in 2027. And then past that, I'll be working on a third sports romance, kind of closer to the end of the year.
Thank you so much. As we wrap up, I just want to give a big thank you to our authors for such a great conversation today. And thanks to all of our audience members for being with us. Our next set of concurrent panels includes Looking for a New Love and Nightmare Narratives. Thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.